arguments or players, and you move those in a certain strategic way to win, or it is more a poker game, where the cards in your hands are the evidence that you use, and you manipulate that evidence to persuade the judge in a certain way that is very similar to things like bluffing. I'm under the poker game strategy that is where you use debate and your ethos and persuasion to attach the human element. As Matthew said, the Tommy gun approach doesn't work because the judge is human too. And if you can connect with the judge on a human level, it automatically increases your speaker points and makes them want to vote for you, which does crazy things with the human mind. Ask any girl. So first off, its meta level is that persuasion is absolutely key to winning. In a world where you are not persuasive, arguments have no differentiation. You do not access nexus questions. You do not access framing questions. You do not access any type of persuasive element which is necessary to differentiate arguments and get to truth. So an example of one of the most persuasive speeches in history, let's hope this works, is Seth Gannon. I played this, they played this for us last year, and I think it's very descriptive of how to give a good speech. Yeah. It is finals of the NDT, the National Debate Tournament. It is Wake Forest versus Kansas. Kansas is broken into affirmative. Wake Forest is read 11-all. They double turn themselves in the block because that is a novice strategy. This is Seth Gannon's 2-R in recovering from the finals of the NDT of a double turn, where he does everything necessary that he could to possibly win this round. Do y'all know if there are speakers?
I don't know if there's speakers. I imagine that there's some sort of cable.
Let me see if there's speakers.
In the path.
There should be speakers.
Yeah.
Rolf said there were.
See if there's a dongle down there that has cable.
This is why you need Ross. This is why we hire Ross. Yes, I need Ross to do everything. You watched me debate last year. I need Ross to do everything. These things are ordered in Galilee.
That's on camera.
Yeah.
You can use that out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. There is no volume coming out of these things at all. Is there? No. Oh well.
You need to plug it in. You don't have it totally plugged into your laptop.
Huh?
You don't think you have it totally plugged into your laptop.
You don't have the what?
Plug
Is-
it into your laptop.
I
Yeah.
did.
Then we'll push. Okay. No?
Yeah, I'm doing a little push. I'm good at a little push. Alright. Well.
There's nothing there that applies elsewhere.
There we go.
So we go. Hey.
Now, this was obviously one of the most boneheaded moves ever, but
I want you all to watch this speech, and I want you all to raise your hand to tell me what he does here that allows him to pick up one ballot from a double turn. This is pretty impressive.
I think they gave it back to us. We're not going for offsets. We also went to the high yield PA, so we solved all the impact terms because we're going for the death penalty.
This is the finals of the NDT.
Okay. So I mess up the high yield thing, and then the Middle East war thing on the DA. But Bricker was so eager to take advantage of it that they conceded the Germany war impact. They have conceded that risk that someone still commits a terrorist attack outweighs any nuclear war, because nuclear war does not cause extinction, which is the CITES evidence. If I come back from extinction, future generations, it's nearly infinite people that get lost. So any risk of that outweighs. The German war is better because it's not more probable. Any risk of climate terror is better because it's the biggest risk of extinction. They don't go for the firms. They concede their severance and intrinsic and should be rejected. They concede a clear statement TA that they will be struck down by the court. They do not go for conditional counterplans bad. They concede they're the heart of foreign policy. We don't condition the plan. We condition the subsidies. It's fully legitimate. Now, the Middle East war argument. Germany outweighs because the probability is 100%. Bioterror outweighs to the magnitude. That's all above. If I make this at all inevitable because of either the stuff I'm going to do on the politics TA or my indicts of Perez, we outweigh. Any less probability than Germany war, and the flow means we outweigh, because I said probability in the 2MC. Now, he says he's a professor. He does not answer my 2MC argument that he is a professor who has spent the last 30 years of his life trying to scare people away from the peace process because he's an Israeli hack. That is the reason he does not want the peace process. He does not want it because he has done independent analytic study. He does not want it because he supports Israel and does not like what it would do for Israel. So he says it would cause a nuclear war. Let's say that takes out 5% of the probability because it's just some indict that Seth is making up. It still means Germany war is outweighs because it's been dropped. They say it leads to a nuclear war. We'll make this inevitable. They have no impact outside of the nuclear war Middle East stuff that's on politics. They say accidents, the state created, solves terror, etc. He says it solves all terror. I just asked them if there's any effective peace process other than Middle East war. They said no. The terror argument is explained above. We also solved the motive for terror and US EU to terrorist bioterror, which is what the big impact is to. So even if the peace process motivates new terror, it is solved by the US EU because their cooperation arrests those people and shut them down. Let's go to politics. This is their only offense. And they drop ours. Politics. The nomination is 5 days away. I just did a Google News search for Chris Hill. I don't know if he's been confirmed or not. We're going to win the debate either way. If there is any risk he has not been, that means all of their internal leak takeouts about budget, about immigration, about health care make it inevitable. Those are warrants that their leak term does not solve. Reasons he's already expended political capital. Those cards include that they were not wins for him. They did not activate winners win. They cost him political capital. That also mitigates the risk of Middle East war. It is even more inevitable than it was a second ago. They say no spillover. Their uniqueness cards don't validate this, though. Their non-unique say that these issues did spill over, which is the reason prefer their evidence and their non-uniques making it inevitable over their own no spillover argument. Their argument was a double bind. Either this already activated it or it doesn't spill over. We are saying we'll concede your cards that it spilled over and non-unique. But that's not my real trick. I hope you all can flow as well as I can. That's a joke. I can't flow at all. But I did get this. They said the AF solves Middle East war. And by they, I mean Bricker. Just a few minutes ago in the 1AR. Everybody was here. I hope some of you are flowing. Because I'm going to get mad at Ed Lee when he doesn't have this on their flow. So somebody help him out. It says the AF solves the Middle East. Concede that argument. The counterplan solves the entirety of the AF. The counterplan solves the entirety of the AF. He follows this argument by saying if we were in any risk of the someone steps with the counterplan, we have link turned the TA. I asked them about this during prep time. They say that's what the state's counterplan, obviously, because there's no solvency and anything else. Now, the counterplan has never, politics has never been a net benefit to our counterplan. It does the plan since states say no, and it's unpopular for all the same reasons. Had they ever said it was a net benefit for us to avoid these kind of arguments, I would have run a card that said doing the conditioned states in this way costs Obama a lot of political capital. So these inevitability arguments don't get solved by winners win, because any risk they do is solved by the counterplan. But if I'm going to link to both the plan and the counterplan, any risk of it, that's even more inevitability because both of them cause a Middle East war. So let's do that. They say winners win, he has to overcome the losses. But they concede from 1AR's argument that it proved or links prove it is a loss. Because in the process of winning, he expends political capital. They concede that that spills over to other agenda items because he has to please these people on other issues. He doesn't get winner momentum if he alienates all the people in the Congress. Even if they win, he does get winner momentum, so does the counterplan. I don't need much. I screwed up in the negative plot. There are no speaker points. You cannot say we have lost this debate just because I was opponent. I don't know what the 2AR can say. Do not allow new answers. I don't know how he's going to talk any faster than that, because I haven't said very much. If he can give you a clear explanation, I don't know how he can.
finals of the NDT. I'm going to ask you all a question. What are some things that he did that made that persuasive? Lauren?
He used probability.
He did use probability. He was very clear about indicting probability. Mark?
Humor.
Humor. Yes. Yes. He was very funny. So Dan's very funny.
He was more personal with the judges by stepping in front of the podium.
Yeah, I hope y'all noticed that. He stepped away from the podium 3 times. Think about how constricted y'all get sometimes behind the podium.
He attacked the authors.
He did. He used evidence and to me, the most persuasive thing that he did was the beginning of the 2R. He admits that he's stupid. And Mike Matthew talked about that. Admitting that sometimes you're wrong, admitting that you messed up, makes it more likely that the judge is going to buy your next arguments instead of if you're just no, we're perfect. So that was a 4-1 for Kansas. Guess who the judge was who sat for Wake Forest? Seth Gannon called him out in a speech. Ed Lee. Because he makes a joke at Ed Lee. And Ed Lee votes for Wake Forest. Not saying Ed Lee's a bad judge. All I'm saying is that shows the personal element of debate. When in a round where someone double turned, because of his personal and amiable self, making jokes at Ed Lee, it was a 4-1, he still managed to pick up a ballot. Y'all should go watch that speech. It's great. How to be persuasive. I don't think enough people know how to be persuasive in this room. I think y'all think loud is persuasive. No. Volume does not equate persuasion. That is annoying. There's a few steps that are necessary to make you better persuasive. First off is nonverbal communication. This includes things like body gestures and movements. As you notice, he walked away from the podium. He gained like he said, a personable self with the judge because he walked away from it. Next off is proxemics, which, as Jared told me, is space, commands, territory, and dominance. Again, this goes back to how he walked away from the podium. Move around the room. In cross-examination, be in front of your opponent because it makes you seem more credible. Lastly is eye contact or engagement. If you are like this, the judge is not going to assume that you care about whether you're thinking in the back. However, if you are making eye contact with the judge, this provides you 2 benefits specific to eye contact. First off is that cognitive because it gives info about your thought process. And next off is monitor function because you can use eye contact to see how someone responds to your message. If I'm talking to Patrick in a debate round, but I'm not looking at him, and he has this disgusting face on his look because the argument I'm going for is stupid and he doesn't understand it, if I'm not looking at him, I'm just going to move on. However, in a world in which I'm making eye contact, I'm able to read the judge. Judges give out signs, which means that this is a cheating sheet on how to win judges if you don't know what's going on in the round. Second off is verbal communication. It's pretty simple. It's just voice as a medium. Loudness and softness. As you notice, sometimes he got quiet. At the end of his 2-R, he's like, I don't know what else they can say. He's not yelling at the judge. He's being honest. I don't know what else they can say. I didn't speak fast. But at other times, when he's yelling, he's saying he conceded. But again, this isn't merely volume, but it's voice as a medium, which means that you need a certain amount of persuasive element, not just yelling. Third is the ethos moment, which a lot of people consider as the most important aspect of debate. How to make an ethos moment? You have to make a memory. It's got to be a departure from the norm. Seth Gannon does this perfectly when he steps away from the podium or when he starts talking about how the dude is an Israeli hack. Right? The judge has no option than to look up from the flow, look at what you're doing in their eyes, look at what you're doing, and it creates a connection moment, which means that you as a debater have to initiate this. Here's a Facebook video of me debating the capitalism critique where in the middle of my 2-R, I stop and talk for over 30 seconds. And that is the ethos moment that y'all need to do. You need to be able to get above the flow to a certain degree where you can slow down and make things important. The differentiation in speed here is critical and absolutely necessary to illustrate to the judge what a nexus question is. If you blow through the link turn debate and the ass stands up in the 2AR and goes hardcore on the link turn debate going slow, the judge will perceive that as they are more cognitively aware of what the most important thing in this debate round. So there are a few ways to do this. One is distinction between nonverbal and verbal movements as you can, which means that you need to also walk away from the podium, lower your voice, increase it. Variations of these things necessitate changing it. Second off is that you can pick a slogan or shorthand. There's multiple examples of these. Live to fight another day on the critique. Break some eggs to make an omelet, as Skip Coulter would say. Let there be humans to fix. These type of shorthand slogans are not arguments in their most basic forms, but rather framing arguments and ethos Am I going too fast? Is everyone keeping up? All right. When to make persuasion moments. First off is the argument you're clearly winning. Again, Seth knows he's going to win this German determining war impact. So he spends over a minute of his speech there going slow, explaining why determining war makes nuclear war inevitable and implicates the entirety of the round. Second is when there's a huge execution error. When he says they have conceded, he repeats it, they have conceded. These type of things, as Matthew says, are much more valid when you only say it once in a round than if you say it every other speech. Which means that when you say this, make sure they conceded it so the judge doesn't think you're bad at flowing, like Seth Gannon, and make sure that you are making clear why that implicates the round. C is have an ethos argument on a key argument. This can include things like impact calculus, turning case. Now the best time to use it, the best use of ethos moments is that audience analysis dictates the success of an ethos moment. What this means is that for you to best utilize an ethos moment, you have to know who you're talking to. This is why reading judge philosophies is necessary, saying things like, in your judge philosophy, you said this, and explain the argument. There are two ways to do this. One, better know your judge. Again, read the judge wiki philosophy. Judges say everything that they want to hear in a round on the judge philosophy wiki, which means ethos moments are much easier to connect in a world and where you are talking and you know the judge personally. The second off is make jokes. As Mark pointed out, Seth was pretty funny. He was like, I'm horrible at flowing. And Simeons of Emory, the affirmative said that the Afghan army is failing in the status quo. They don't even know how to read. I get up and make Evan say the joke that people that don't know how to read can still be good at fighting wars and taking orders, proven with the Auburn football team. You see how that's not an argument, but it's an ethos moment. It's a joke and it's humor. And Ross and I were doing a joke cross-sex in front of the novices. And Ross was like, Lee, wouldn't you agree that hegemony is bad because it caused us to start the Vietnam War and then simultaneously lose it? And I said, well, Ross, we wouldn't have lost it if we had space weapons. You see, there are jokes, there's humor that you can input and surround, that if you know your judge better, it makes arguments more clearly and connects with them, which makes something more valid, because humans are not computers, rather they like thinking. Organization. Don't ask Jeff Rogers about this. Organization means reconstructing the debate, grouping, and condensing arguments in a way that makes it easier for you to flow and for judges to follow you. That is what organization means. Reconstructing the debate, grouping, and condensing arguments so it's easier to flow and easier for the judges to understand what you're doing. Group the impact out debate, group the uniqueness debate. I'm going to make 3 arguments at the top. Now I'm going to answer their arguments. That type of grouping, condensing, and reconstructing debate is a necessity in having a good flow and helping the judge pick you up. Like Matthew said, judges only flow 80% of the arguments you make. You have to do this. How to organize. 1 is pre-construct 2AC front lines. This is an app lecture, and you have to make front lines so you know how to answer things and you can't waste prep time. 2 is stay true to those front lines. I did a drill with Mark and Charles in the novice lab of how to give a 1AR where you literally almost reread the 2AC block. You look at the 2AC block and you extend those arguments by grouping them. You have to stay true to those front lines in order for the debate to have some similarity of that, which means that the first argument and the 2AC is non-unique, the first argument on the 1AR better be non-unique. Third off is extend those points, group and answer them. Extend our point 1 non-unique, group their arguments. I'll make 2 arguments at the top, answer their arguments. Extending, grouping are necessary. 4 is don't let the negative throw you off. The negative, I'm going to get to that later, but the negative is going to try to throw you off of your front lines and reconstruct the debate that it's easier for them to win isolated nexus questions. You cannot let the negative do that. And the only way to do that is by staying true to your front lines. Now, the benefits of organization. 1, it allows you to answer their arguments. Like I said, imagine they have 3 uniqueness pieces of evidence that says that the debt ceiling is going to pass now, vote counts, Republican momentum, and Obama's pushing the status quo. If you have one card that post-states their evidence that says that X senator jumped off and that destroyed the entire debt ceiling, group the uniqueness debate. None of their evidence assumes our new senator that says that he has jumped off the bandwagon, which means none of their arguments are responsive. You've answered 3 arguments with 1. Saves time, and it makes the debate better. 2, it allows you to reword their arguments. Judges like rewording because it allows you to make jokes. At Ohio Valley, we ran an affirmative that said that the military is bad as causing us war in Afghanistan. That's killing hegemony. They ran a counterplan that says increased nanotechnology to the military allows us to have invisible tanks we kill China. The 2AR, I stand up and say, the affirmative says the military is bad, and the negative says to give them invisible tanks. You see how that's totally not what their counterplan actually says, but it is reconstructing and rewording the debate that allows you to capitulate and have ethos moments with the judge. Third off, it allows you to dampen 1AR concessions. In a world where the 1AR groups arguments, it is much easier to say the 1AR didn't concede that when he grouped the debate, and it allows the 2AR more flexibility. In a world where the 1AR groups arguments, extend our uniqueness to debate, group it, extend our link to debate, group it. It's easier for 2ARs to be flexible in making up new arguments because the judge at least has ink next to those arguments that you can spin. 4. Organization allows you to do meta-level framing. This is absolutely vital to winning all types of debate. This, combined with persuasion, will win you every round of debate. Judges want meta-level framing combined with organization more than anything else in the round. In a world in where you know what the most important argument is, and you reconstruct that in the way that you want to win it, and use a persuasive moment, you will not lose a round. You will not lose a round in high school debate. Why? You won't lose a round. By controlling organization, you can control the flow, where it shows arguments, you can put arguments at the top. Again, group the impact calc debate. There are 2 conceded arguments here. Boom, boom. And this allows you to do an ethos moment along with an organization moment that allows you to do meta-level framing. 2, things like author qualifications that determine truth claims or post-dating. Group the uniqueness debate. At the top, they have conceded a key framing question when evaluating politics uniqueness evidence is that post-dating is the most important issue because politics changes every second. You just created meta-level framing that was only allowed to do because you said group the debate and organized it. So only in a world in which you organize debates can you do in things like framing analysis, which is why it's absolutely necessary. P.S. The app is in charge of the order debate. The negative is going to try to throw you off your wagon, try and get you to mess up, put arguments randomly. However, you have to stay true to your 2AC front lines. You have to stay true to that organization and extend those across for you to win. The 1AC, the backbone of the affirmative. The 1AC is this is the structure of affirmative. I'm going to talk about how to utilize everything that you can. Every speech counts. The 1AC is the backbone of the brain of every good affirmative. 1. Every 1AC card should have a purpose. This includes things like framing question, impact calculus, and preemption. If you are reading 5 pieces of evidence that says that a nuclear asteroid strike is probable, you are wasting your time in the 1AC. Again, if you have 5 pieces of evidence that says there's going to be an asteroid strike, you are wasting your time. More cards is not better. Every card should have a purpose. Second off, you as the 2A should have much more, if not more, say in the construction of the 1AC, because you are going to be the person that is extending those arguments and using it in the debate round. Third off is that fewer cards is not worse. Do not feel like more is better. That is not true. More cards of the same argument is simply a waste of time. Again, every single 1AC should have 1 arg and then a bunch of preemptions to other arguments. So if you know that they're going to read the asteroid bomb to that, and you have spare time in your 1AC, read the preemptions to it in the 2AC. But don't over-read cards and just the structure because you think that it makes your 1AC look longer and cooler. The 2AC. 2AC is the foundation of the affirmative speeches. Tips on how to use the 2AC. Use your case to answer dissent specifically. Specification is key to winning debates, and distinction allows you to garner link terms. So imagine you're reading the asteroids mapping affirmative, and the negative stands up and talks about why funding NASA is hard for Obama to do. You've got to use your case to answer this argument because their evidence is not specific. If you were like, their evidence assumed asteroid mapping, we have a more specific link term about the plan, was the 1AC that indicates that bipartisan support for it is increasing. That is what allows you to give them 100% risk of their link term and still win. Because you don't need to refute it, you just say it's wrong. 2 is make sure you put your case first in the 2AC order. Put it first or behind topicality, but never put it last. As the negative, you have to win disadvantages and counterplans before you go to the case because you're not going to win. The same is true for the affirmative because advantages are merely disadds to the status quo. For any chance of you winning offense, you have to make sure that you win your case first, which means you've got to put it at the top of your order, and it's all at every 2AC, every 1AR, and every 2AR. 3 is that it is your job as a 2AC to initiate impact calculus. This makes things like case solves the impact, because in a world where the United States is the hegemon, nations don't go to war, or asteroids are going to outweigh and turn their impact. Doing this in the 2AC, if it is conceded by the bloc, makes it much more easier for the 1AR to make a quick impact calculus, but it's your job to initiate that. Fourth is add-ons. Dan talked about these, and I can promise you, every time I read an add-on in high school debate, 90% of the time it's what won me the round. I'm not kidding you. Every time I read an add-on in high school debate, 90% of the time, negative messed it up, and we lost it. Conversely, 90% of the times we lost when we were negative were when they read an add-on. Round 6 of the TOC, we were debating CPS. They read an add-on, the Israeli add-on. We didn't cover it as much because, you know, it's an add-on, it's not an advantage, whatever. It's not that important. They went for it, we lost. Add-ons are the easiest way for affirmatives to reshape debate. In the weaponization affirmative analysis app, there's cool Indo-Pak war add-ons, there's Israeli strikes add-ons, there's multiple Taiwan Chinese war add-ons. These type of things allow you to recreate and basically read a new dissat into a 2AC. It's just as strategic for the negative to read a 2NC dissat as it is for an affirmative to read a 2AC add-on. I hope you understand how that allows you to reconstruct the debate. Last helicopter out of Vietnam. The 2AR is your last chance to make new arguments. Don't waste it. Again, if you need to make new arguments, don't waste it. You have to make them. You got to do it. One, this is the last speech in the entire round. I'm not telling you to cheat, but cheat. Don't allow new arguments, but you are allowed to make new arguments. Ryan K, one of the best debaters ever, coined the phrase, "It's not new if it's true." I think all 2ARs need to say this argument at least once. It's not new if it's true. And we were debating Glenbrook North my junior year. They conceded in the 1AR that the state's counter plan causes the United States federal government to model them. But they had a Supreme Court's app. The 2AR stands up. I made this the next question. I said they conceded that the United States federal government model state, so 90% of the app. The 2AR stands up and says, it's not new if it's true. So the Supreme Court will never model states' arguments. And with that framing, it allowed them to come back into the debate. Which means it's not new if it's true. You gotta make it, you gotta make it. Two, is that this is your moment to reframe the debate. This includes things like reasons to prefer evidence should be the focus of this debate. You have the ability as the 2A to read every single card that there is in the debate. Again, you have the ability to read every card. Mike Evans said you're never going to win a round if the team's reading your evidence and you're not reading their evidence. Or where you read their politics uniqueness cards, you can find flaws in them. And you can shift the next question. If your card, you have two pieces of evidence that says there's a vote count of 14 to 6 occurring in the status quo. You have two pieces of evidence that says that. They don't have any piece of evidence about vote counts. The 2AR should stand up and be like, vote counts are the most accurate and predictive way of determining uniqueness questions, which means that it's the most important thing to do this in the round. You can be tricky, you can initiate things with the 2AR. When the judge calls for the cards, if you provide a warrant, you're going to be like, you're right, the negative cards don't have any things about vote counts, and you're going to automatically win the round. Third is impact calculus. I'll get to more on this later. I have an entire slide about it because it's my favorite argument in debate. However, as I told Mark and Charles yesterday, if you ask anyone that's ever been a Mount Brook novice, the number one rule of policy debate is getting to extinction. The 2AR has to do impact calculus. The number one rule of policy debate is getting to extinction. This means answering turns case arguments. It should be the top of the 2AR on the disadvantage flow or on the counterclaim flow. Time allocation. 2ACs need this. Not necessarily speed, but time allocation. Seth Gannon was a very slow debater, but he covered every single argument of the round pretty well. A lot better than probably I could trying to spread. Again, it does not mean speed. You cannot lose rounds in the camp tournament merely because the 1NC is 7-all. You are not allowed to drop dissats. You aren't allowed to look at your timer and be like, I have 20 seconds left. I just might as well read the 15th argument on the politics dissat and drop the spinning dissat. You can't do that. You have to make sure to adequately organize your 2AC in a way that you can drop these, where you don't necessarily have to be the fastest debater in the round, but you are the most organized and allocated. There are a lot of ways to save time in the 2AC because it's the most time-pressed speech in debate. In my opinion, is the most time-pressed speech in the debate because you have to answer everything and beat the negative with it. The 1AR just has to respond. One is embedded clash. On the 2AC, you do not need to say on the case debate, they say, I say. They say, I say. In the 2AC, all you can do is answer their arguments. Eliminate they say. Give an example of Mark where we gave his entire 2AR in half the time because I did not say they say and explain their arguments. You just make the arguments. This is called embedded clash. It's where you say the arguments, you don't say they say. Save time. 2, say group. They read 3 pieces of cards of the United States dominance in space is inevitable. Group them. Boom, boom, boom. Done. The next 3 cards we do an argument. 3 is extend 1AC cards. I'm going to talk more about this later, but you read 8 minutes of 1AC evidence for a reason. Not a single time in my high school debate was there more than 5 rounds there were not more than 5 rounds my senior year my entire senior year where I read a 2AC card on case. Not more than 5. Because I used my 1AC strategically, and every argument that they made, my 1AC cards answered. 1AC spends 4 minutes on case, you spend 30 seconds. Allows you to save time, answer the dissent more. But you have to use 1AC evidence. Fourth off is use cross-examination questions. If cross-ex is just devastating on the EU counterplan solvency advocate, how in the world does the EU put up space weapons, right? This doesn't make sense, it's illogical. The 2AC can say, go to the counterplan, cross-examination proves EU doesn't have solvency advocate. Boom, you just made a very, 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 very developed argument that would have taken you 25 seconds to read a card, or 15 seconds to at least explain, and 3 seconds because of cross-examination, which means that it's your job as a 2A to listen to what the 1AR is saying, and make sure that gets into your speech in the 2AC. Otherwise, cross-examination is a waste of time again. I think none of y'all, I don't think enough of y'all utilize cross-examination and using it to save time in your speeches elsewhere. You're making arguments, they're just in question format. A case debate. As Kush Patel said from Green Hill, case, case, case. Will Repko, one of the most famous and arguably best debate coaches ever, said case is absolutely vital to winning all affirmatives. The debate should end where it starts. The purpose of you want to see is strategic, which means use it and you follow through the debate. In the starter app, you already piece of evidence in the 1AC that indicates asteroids outweigh nuclear war. This is your 2AR strategy. You should be at the top of the 2AC on case, and 1AR should make sure it's in it, but this is your 2AR strategy. You make this argument malleable in the context of doing things like magnitude outweighs probability and time frame, but you use it. Your 1AC is strategic. Put cards in there that answer things. This means a couple of things in World War cases debate. Again, make it at the top of your order, maybe top of Cali first. 2, treat turns on case like disadvantages. Pablo Gannon from Damien last year won a lot of negative rounds by reading 1 or 2 card turns on case. And Ryan Galloway will back me up on this. Good timing. Pablo Gannon from Damien won multiple negative rounds by reading 1 or 2 card turns on case. 2ACs would blow them all, and then the block would be the case debate. Don't get confused. Just because it's on case doesn't mean it's not a substantial dissent, which means you have to treat on-case things like disadvantages. Also, how to help this. 1, this means a couple of things. 1, use your 1AC. You did not read A events over for a reason. Again, I didn't read a single card, argued more than 5 times in 2AC in high school debate. 2 is embedded clash and group things. Many overviews for impact calculus in the 2AC. Again, group theory 3 arguments that a Jiminy is inevitable. And third off is that the 2AC can get away with murder. I didn't understand this until my senior year. Now, I'm not advocating that you drop every argument, but the 2AC does not have to re-explain every tag in the 1AC. You're allowed to be quick and efficient because judges understand that. Boom, boom, boom. Get it done, get it through. You can get away with murder because the 1AR can re-explain things because negatives have leniency on the affirmatives on case debate because you already read those cards. You just have to re-explain them, and they know that's going to be in the 2AR. Lastly is impact calculus. Again, this is my sweetheart. I've probably lost more rounds spending 5 minutes on impact calculus than I should have won. But don't take advice from me, but it's still my Achilles heel. The reason why anything matters is impact calculus. If the 2NR does not say why econ collapse is bad, the 2AR can stand up and say, there's not an impact to econ collapse is bad. I need a 1% risk of an asteroid, which means you voted affirmative on probability. Or vote affirmative just by default. They don't have an impact. So reason why to use 1, it wins rounds. Simple as that. It's the only reason why anything matters. Which means if you win, that asteroid strikes are the only scenario for causing extinction, and that nuclear war is not going to cause extinction, you've won the round. Because you isolated the biggest impact magnitude in the debate round. Too often it allows you to skirt debates. If you have 2 advantages and the counterplan only solves 1, or when you do impact calculus on the advantage that the counterplan does not solve. Say asteroid mapping. 1 is asteroids, 2 is a Gemini. You somehow find the Gemini impact. EU counterplan only solves asteroid. You gotta do impact calculus on a Gemini. You gotta do impact calculus on a Gemini. If you can get a Gemini to outweigh the disadvantage, the counterplan is minute and meaningless. Again, if you don't have answers to a new thing, and it only solves one of your advantages, you have to do it. How to? 1 is comparison, comparison, comparison. No impact has all time frame, magnitude, and probability. No, your impact is not the fastest, it is not the most probable, and it is surely not the biggest. No impact is that. So, understanding that, you only have to pick one of these. You can only pick one in a good persuasive 2AR. If you were the asteroids mapping affirmative, magnitude is all that matters. Magnitude is all that matters. I'm going to get to why you can make a few arguments. if ever time to just copy paste a block, here it is. Because I'm going to tell you certain arguments that you need to write. Or time frame. Time frame determines turns case and quicker, you die quicker, faster. So you get to live another day. If you're going for the spinning disk attack against the asteroid disk attack, you can only die once. If we win a quicker time frame into economic collapse, that means we turn their impact before we can solve an asteroid collapse, and it outweighs because you can only die once. That's why time frame is important. Magnitude is death count is all that matters. The hammer on the head analogy is I can either hit you on the head today with a hammer or kill you in a week. You're obviously going to want to take the hammer to the head because in that world you're still alive. That's the thesis of magnitude. Is that even if they want a short-term economic collapse and nuclear war, magnitude outweighs because it's the only scenario for human extinction. We can always come back. Again, we can always come back from things like nuclear war, but we cannot come back from asteroid. Third off is probability. Probability is the black sheep of debate magnitude because it's determined not by the impact itself, but through the line by line, which means they have conceded your internal economic collapse. It's 100% probable in a world where depth of spinning determines that. This determines truth, and it's the lens to evaluate things like time frame and magnitude, which means that it's the necessary argument into winning on time frame and magnitude impacts. Marquise is asleep. He's so cute. 2 is arguments like turns and solves the disk. I went over this with my novices. Examples are hegemony, because it solves their impacts, and collapse turns their impact. If I have a hegemony impact, you have an economy impact, the two of you should stand up and say, in a world without the United States hegemony, global sea lanes collapse, economic interdependence eliminates, globalization reverses, and trade is absolutely irrelevant. You have just won an internal link into their impact, which means you do not have to outweigh, you do not have to win a risk of outweighing their impact. Merely, you turn it what allows you to access it better. Also, economy. High economy deters war. Arguments like, if I was neg against a hegemony argument, I would say, in a world of a high economy, even if U.S. hegemony collapses, economic interdependence dictates that nations do not have an incentive to go to war, which means that China and the United States will not kill each other. Do you see what this is doing? This is making comparative claims. Your impacts are big, yes, but it only is in relation to the opponent's, arguments and impacts themselves. Which means to have any risk of being able to win this debate, you have to compare the impacts. Again, you can't play a game if it's apples to oranges. No, you can only play it if it's apples to apples. Everyone knows that. 3 is even if statements. Even if the economy collapses, hegemony can deter the wars. Even in a world where economic interdependence is totally eliminated and every nation hates each other, in a world where we have space weapons, China would still not get angsty enough. Even if statements, which means that even if they want 100%, you have to make certain concessions in debate. You have to make concessions. Listen, even if the economy collapses, hegemony deters the wars that they call, which means that you grant them statements. 4 is that this makes making 1, 2, 3 type or overviews. I learned this my senior year. It took me too long, so I don't spend a lot of time on impact calculus. But 1, explain your argument. Hegemonic collapse causes apolarity due to power transition, causes global nuclear war. 2, why does that turn their impact? In a world without American hegemony, it means that the economy collapses, turns their impact. 3 is the even if statement. Even if they win the economy collapses, hegemony can deter the wars. Again, impact calculus is the most important asset of debate. I think Marquise is snoring. Which means that you have to win impact calculus to have any hope of being a two-way debate. And that's the question.
I think that we're going to have no video after
How are you, Quin?
Phillips,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
You
good.
didn't sleep last night?
Yeah.
I don't think you did.
This